So, and you can't make the playoffs, and we made the playoffs last year. That's like the thing that sits with me of why I would say the seat's warm for Josh McDaniels.
Hey, Tom Brady could be the sell to bring him back. Get me Tom Brady. So
I
that's a
hate
good
that.
point right there.
I don't like that.
Let's move on to a guy who's currently coaching Tom Brady right now, and Todd Bowles. How do we feel about his job? And I guess I'll start us off and say that joint warm, bro. I'm gonna go warm. Now, there's a report that said that they may not be looking to fire him, but I think if once they see the GOAT leave, that's going to dictate a lot more. It's easy to say, oh, we ain't gonna fire him now, but when you realize that your quarterback is Kyle Trask and it's a whole lot to ask, you gonna get his ass out of there. I'm gonna go warm. I'm gonna just leave it at that, short and simple. Go ahead, Coach.
How I say it, for me, I think that it's hot, like real hot, like boiling hot. I don't think, I just think,
Yep.
yeah, I think, once when Brady do leave for free agency, I think that his job will be in jeopardy. I just felt like the team, this current team was given to him. You feel me? I felt like, despite them losing a couple key guys, but I just felt like, as the formula, I thought the formula was still there, but it seemed like with the record at the end and situation at the end at 6-7, it doesn't look so good. And if they for some reason barely make it to the playoff and get bounced in the first round, then yeah, he's out of there. He's out of there for sure.
Chase.
I think if Tom stays, I think it's the only thing. Like unless Tom stays and says, "Yo, I want Todd out." But I think if Tom stays, I think that's the only thing that saves Todd Bowles' job. I think if Tom leaves and goes to San Francisco or Las Vegas, I think Tampa Bay brings the hammer down on Todd Bowles. Even with Todd Bowles being a Bruce Arians guy, I still think Tampa Bay brings the hammer down on him and blame him for Tom leaving.
You real quickly, Zach. Real quick. You brought a very interesting point about the Bruce Arians, because that's Bruce Arians' guy. Yeah. Like they knew each other for a long time. He was the one that said, "I want you to take over his job." How much input does Bruce Arians have? Because we never really got his full description of his role. Or you just in the front office, right? We don't know what his role really is. I don't even think he knows what it is. But does that role entails him making a decision like that? And if so, how would that impact the decision? Go ahead, Zach.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if Bruce Arians has any say in it, I think, like I said, I think that's the only thing that saves Todd Bowles' job if Tom Brady leaves. But I don't even know if then. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers still bring the hammer down and say, "Yo, you're out."
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying this. I think the Buccaneers are probably one of the 5 worst coach teams in the NFL right now, and their coaching has decided and cost them some games so far this season, and there's nothing worse than that. The other thing that would maybe bring Todd Bowles back is a deep playoff run. Like, I'd be curious to see what would happen in that case, but the bottom line is, so far this season, the Buccaneers have not gained any advantage from their coaching, and as a Jet fan, I know this. I witnessed 4 years of Todd Bowles. His best year was his first year, and he progressively just kept getting worse and worse and worse. I still wonder what Sam Darnold could have been if the Jets had a different coach when they drafted him. But Todd Bowles is just one of those guys. He's better as a coordinator. He's an elite defensive coordinator. But as a head coach, he's just not getting the job done. Byron Leftwich doesn't really understand, the Buccaneers running game is ineffective. And when you're doing it every single first down, it's just so predictable. It was also just very odd how late in that Cleveland game, they didn't really give Tom Brady, the GOAT, a chance to go march down the field quickly and win the game. I think the Buccaneers are interesting because really for the past year plus, we've all kind of wondered with their franchise, their future doesn't really matter because they have Tom Brady and they'll figure everything out once Tom Brady leaves. And I'm very curious to see, assuming Brady goes, where do they go from here? Do they just go full rebuild? That might be the best option. But there's still talent on this roster, and maybe with another quarterback, they could still be competitive. But I think there's still a lot of questions to be answered here about Todd Bowles and how, if he's going to be the Buccaneers coach next season. The Buccaneers, they're probably going to be a playoff team, which is probably unlike any other team in this conversation. So I think things could really change. I think right now, if you ask me, is Bowles coaching the Bucs next year? I would say no, but I do think things could change because the Buccaneers still have a full season and maybe playoffs ahead of them. So I would say warm, but nothing more than that.
I want to get to this guy here. And maybe when we did this whole segment, we probably should have started off with him, but I took the segue route. Nathaniel Hackett. Zach, I'm going to keep it with you. How do we feel about this clown job?
Yeah, it's crazy. There are just so many things to say about the Denver Broncos. And it's funny because in this situation, we literally could have called this after the first game he coached that Monday night against Seattle. And I think there are three guys. I'll bring them up as they come up. I'll mention this as they come up. But I think there are three coaches in the NFL that I am very confident will not be back next year. And Nathaniel Hackett is one of them. I think his seat is scorching hot. I mean, the crazy thing about the Broncos is like their defense is really good. It's elite. And there's so many stats about the Broncos that are just hilarious. Going into Sunday, Jamal Williams, yes, the running back for the Lions, had more touchdowns by himself than the entire Broncos offense. That is no longer the case, but that was going into Sunday. You also look at this one. No quarterback in the league this was before Sunday. Russ finally had a good game, but no quarterback in the league has had a lower passer rating this season than Russell Wilson, not named Davis Mills. Like Davis Mills is literally the only quarterback in the league going into Sunday with a lower passer rating than Russell Wilson. And if the Broncos just scored like 20 plus points a game, they would be 9-3 because their defense is really good. Now, here's where this gets interesting, right? I think the only real option for the Broncos in terms of their next head coach is to hire an offensive mind, put all the blame on Hackett, and just literally pray that they could bring in someone that could fix Russell Wilson. If I'm them, they have very rich ownership, go all out for Sean Payton. But where it gets interesting is I think if their defensive coordinator, if he's not elevated, like I think he might get another head coaching job somewhere else, or he'll definitely be very highly regarded in the coaching industry because I think this Broncos defense is elite, and I think he's done a phenomenal job with them so far this season. And honestly, no one really knows who this guy is. I'll give you his name right now, but the Broncos defensive coordinator, Ijaru Avero, I think he's a name to watch. Like, I think the Broncos' only real choice is to bring in an offensive head coach that could hopefully fix Russell Wilson. But if they do that, they might be letting maybe the best defensive coordinator in the league go because I don't think there's many coaches in the league that have done a better job this season, assistant-wise, than him. So, yeah, I think Hackett is one of the coaches I would put into that scorching hot category.
I agree. He's scorching hot. Now, I could always tell when a coach is out of there by the look in his face on the sideline, where he looked like he just saw a dare. He looked like the UFO is just about to pick him up. That's what I look at when I see this cat on the sideline, Nathaniel Hackett. It looked like he saw a ghost. Like, at least with Brandon Staley, and we're going to talk about him, you know, I probably should bring it up later, but at least with him, he's still looking like he's coaching. Like like he might be here. When I look at this cat right here, he look like he out of there. And that's why I'm going to say scorching hot. I think if you're the Broncos, you need to drop the bag. You have one of the richest owners and people in the world. You literally have to, like, I think he's like number 12 richest person in America. You need to drop the bag. That's your sell. I can get a coach because I have the money. Just like how we talk about the Chargers and they sell is quarterback, Justin Herbert. Your sell is the moolah. Moolah, quarterback. I don't know. I might just take the moolah. So if you want to get any worth of Russell Wilson, because guess what? You married to him. Your dumb asses actually extended him before you saw him play. You didn't even get a test trial. You were like, I want to go full throttle with this clown. Okay, cool. Now you need to give him a coach, and I think he's out of there. And I'm not even like, listen, he's out. He's gone. Scorching hot.
I agree. I mean, the seat's on fire. Like, I mean, y'all seen the meme where the little dog is sitting on the chair and the whole room's on fire around him? That's Nathaniel Hackett right now. Here's what happened. Nathaniel Hackett sold the Denver Broncos on, if you bring me, I will bring Aaron Rodgers. And then you look at the trade. Pull up the trade on your electronic device or on a second screen. Look at that trade. That trade had Aaron Rodgers written all over it. And like I said, Nathaniel Hackett is done. But the Broncos organization has to take some responsibility for this because they looked at that after Green Bay has said no go on Aaron Rodgers. They still looked at it and said, okay, we're going to send the exact same offer to Seattle for Russell Wilson. Because they were like, who can we get? We can't get Aaron Rodgers now. Who's available? Russell was the only one. And instead of adjusting that trade, they sent that exact trade to Seattle. So the Broncos organization, like the general manager, the ownership, they've got to take some responsibility for this as well, because now you're in a situation with Russ. You can't get rid of him. You're stuck with him. You cannot get rid of him. So like you said, like you both said, the only option they have is to get an offensive minded coach to come in there and help, because that's it. You can't prepare for the draft. All your draft picks are gone. You're stuck with Russell Wilson. So you better hope that it's a coaching scheme, because if Russ really ain't cooking no more, if Russ really sucks that bad, man, it's going to be a long 5 years for the Broncos. A long 5 years. So,
Coach,
I heard that hell is hot right now. I heard hell is hot right now. The guy's a fraud, bro.
From Russell Wilson?
Yeah, no, yeah, from both of them, from the head coach to Russell. The guy's a fraud, bro. I can't believe it. I just thought, by him being under, what's the name of the coach in Green Bay again? Matt LaFleur.
Matt LaFleur.
Yeah, I just thought, coming from history, I thought that he was going to be not a good head coach, but an okay head coach. You feel me? From seeing from that first game against Seattle, I was like, bro, what are you doing? Like, where's the game preparation? Where's the game planning? I just felt like in almost every game, that he coached, he always get out coached. You feel me? It's so bad to the point that they had to hire an advisor to help him how to game plan properly. You feel me? And I just think this right here is definitely a one and done deal. I just think, like you guys mentioned, they should go after like an offensive minded coach. One coach that I have in mind is Kellen Moore from the Dallas Cowboys. I just think, with his offense, how unique and creative that offense is, I think, that could help revive Russell Wilson's career.
And for Nathaniel Hackett, this is for you, Mike.
Yeah! Fire! What?
All right, let's move on to the next guy. And I'm going to let y'all know ahead of time that, your boy got 10 minutes left here because I got a skedaddle. Dinner's on the table. But anyway, let's talk about Cliff Kingsbury here. Okay, this is one of the guys. And I'm pretty sure when Zach said there's 3 guys that he knows for sure he's out. Maybe I'm reaching here. Was it Cliff, one of them, or not?
He was.
Okay, go ahead, Zach. The mic is yours again.
Yeah,
Explain
so
why.
we hit on a lot of it to start off the show, but Cliff Kingsbury did not win at Texas Tech with Patrick Mahomes. And it's funny because I never really got the hire to begin with, but if you remember that first year, like Arizona was spunky. I was impressed with Kyler. They were winning games that they weren't necessarily supposed to do. And then that offseason, they get DeAndre Hopkins from the Houston Texans for David Johnson and a second-round pick, just a bad trade that the Cardinals clearly won. And that was their time entering the 2021 season to go all out. They started off that season great, but even when they were winning games, like I just realized this dude's game management is awful. The players don't respect him. We've seen that this year. Kyler Murray is just screaming at him every time he has the opportunity to do so. And again, at this point, the writing's on the wall when the players, especially your starting quarterback, is out on your head coach. Like, what are you going to do there? And the last 2 years, not even this year and everything that's gone wrong, the Cardinals have fallen apart down the stretch. Last year, they were a playoff team, but they really should have been better than that. They should have won the NFC West, and Cliff's in preparations, his inability to game manage. Like he literally, that sequence on Monday Night Football to end the first half, when the Cardinals are driving down the field and it was a 4th and 1, they didn't kick. They didn't get it. It was just a nice play by the defense, Judon, I believe. But then the Patriots took the ball right down the field and kicked the field goal with time remaining. Like they let Mac Jones just march right down the field. And I've just had enough of watching Cliff Kingsbury's and his mistakes just during the games, just basic stuff. And it's unacceptable. I think his seat is scorching hot. He's got to go. It's been a long time coming.
Coach Chase, want to jump in?
I do it. I'll be honest with you. It's hot. It's hot. His seat is hot. I think, this is it. I just felt like, throughout his 4 seasons in Arizona, only 1 playoff appearance, and, you got blown out by the Rams last year. I just felt like he hasn't done anything, bro. His leadership sucked. Even your own quarterback went to the press and say, schematically, we're fucked. And in other words, Cliff Kingsbury, you put that team in a tough position, bro. Other than that, you just more than a college coach, bro. I never saw you as a great head coach at all. Granted, like you had the good personnel around you to make you a good coach, but but you by yourself, you're just terrible, just terrible. These last few games of the season, I don't think that you're going to win anymore. After this week, your team will officially be eliminated from the playoff, and I just think this right here, Arizona going to be in a rebuild stage right now.
Okay, Chase, talk to us.
I tell you what, I'm never gonna be one real to keep a man from his food. If you as y'all know, I like to eat. And we already talked enough about Cliff Kingsbury. I ain't got to say anything. The seat is scorching hot. But if Cliff Kingsbury's got to go, then Brandon Staley's got to go too.
I would say this for Cliff. The thing I don't like about him is that I never saw him handle adversity well at all. Like his adaptability to adversity, it's just I haven't seen it. He sucked in college. He sucks in the NFL. I think he ended up back in college, and I don't think that's a bad thing for him. So, with that being said, this is for you, Cliff Kingsbury.
You're fired. What?
You mentioned it, Brandon Staley. This is the last name I want to pull up, and then I'm gonna go around the panel for any guy that we missed, and we could just one guy, maybe one or two that I didn't bring up, and we could talk about it as well. But Brandon Staley is the last name I'm gonna bring up. How do we feel about Brandon Staley's job security right now? And I guess Chase, you can start us off. I'll leave it with you.
Yeah, man. I don't think he makes good coaching decisions. He went for it on fourth down like 3 or 4 times against the Chiefs, and didn't get it. And it's like, dude, you'd have beat him. I mean, if you'd have taken the points, kicked the field goal. I mean, that's extra points. Those were close games. A couple of them were overtime games. You'd have beat the Chiefs. You didn't do it. Why? I get it, man. Like sometimes you want to play aggressive because you don't want to let Patrick Mahomes on the other end of the field and score points. I totally understand that, but you got to score points, Brandon. Justin Herbert is arguably one of the best, arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the AFC. The fact that we literally had a conversation last year of them being in a game with the Raiders that they could possibly tie to make it into the playoffs, and they couldn't beat the Raiders. Come on. I mean, this team is extremely talented. I love Keenan Allen as a player. I don't like him as a person. If I ever caught him on the outside, it's on site. You heard me, Keenan. It's on site if I catch you outside talking about my quarterback like that. But I think Keenan Allen's extremely talented. Mike Williams as well. Like I said, the fact that team went last year and had to actually discuss a tie was absolutely ridiculous. And like I said, he just doesn't make good coaching decisions with Justin Herbert. If Cliff Kingsbury's got to go, Brandon Staley's got to go too.
When we talk about Brandon Staley, I think a lot of people is making it more clear cut than I really think it is. A lot of people, if you go around, make the playoffs, he should be fine. I'm not sure. And the reason why I say that, unless they go on a deep playoff run. Now, if they go on a deep playoff run, not necessarily meaning they have to win the Super Bowl. Let's say they make the AFC Championship game or the divisional round. Then I think his job is safe. I'm going to go warm here. And it could be room temperature. He controls his destiny to an extent. But if they go to the playoffs and let's say they get bounced in the wild card, I just saw a report today that Sean Payton wants to coach in LA. That's where he's living. He wants to stay there, whether it be the Rams or whether it be the Chargers. Now, Zach here, he doesn't believe that Sean McVay, maybe he does, but he's not certain. I know for a fact, based on my conversations with Zach, that Sean McVay is going to return next year. So maybe that's an option. But the Chargers are as well because they're in LA. And based on that report, the sell is Justin Herbert. If he calls you, and let's say they get bounced in a wild card, or you're going to say no to Sean Payton, or you're going to say, all right, Brandon Staley, you made the playoffs, full go. I don't know. I'm going to say warm.
I think what makes this situation so interesting is the fact that we're talking about the Chargers and their ownership. Because if I was trying to build a winning team and trying to win the Super Bowl, there would be no doubt about it that I'd want Sean Payton over Brandon Staley any day of the week. But if you look at the past coaches that Dean Spanos, the Chargers owner, has hired, they've all been cheap. Brandon Staley, one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL right now. The same thing was for Anthony Lynn. The same thing could be said for Mike McCoy before he got there. And even though this move makes all the sense in the world, it's very un-Chargers-like, considering their history, to make the playoffs and act aggressively on that and say that's not good enough. You know, Dean Spanos, all he cares about is making more money. He doesn't care about winning, because if he did, he would have hired a better coach a long time ago. And honestly, he might have fired Brandon Staley after last season, because Justin Herbert was a top 5 quarterback. He was elite, and they still couldn't make the playoffs. And I agree with Lil when he said his fate is in his own hands. The Chargers have no excuses not to make the playoffs this year, even with their injuries. They're in the most favorable position, as we said, of any of these 3 wildcard teams that are tied at 8-5 right now. And yeah, I would say he's warm as well. He controls his own destiny, but I'm curious to see, like, how aggressive are the Chargers? Are they willing to go all out and spend some money for Sean Payton, and say to everyone, like, okay, we're willing to win? Because it's clear Brandon Staley, I know he coached probably the best game he's ever coached on Sunday night against the Dolphins, but still, we've seen way too many just putrid performances and idiotic decisions. I don't know why every single Charger third down is at the line of scrimmage like they don't have Jesus playing quarterback, because sometimes it looks like that they do. But yeah, when you look at this Chargers team, I don't trust it under his reign, and everything's in his court for now.
When I look at this Chargers team, you know, that's a pretty talented roster, but I'm going to disagree with you guys in terms of, I don't think Brandon Staley owns his own destiny in this one. I just think it's based on how, like, you know, how both the offense and defense play. I just think, you know, the game against the Dolphins kind of brought a lot of momentum moving forward to the season. I think that Herbert will pretty much be his scapegoat in a way, in terms of winning games, putting them in a good position to win the remaining games of the season. I still think that defense still lacking, you know, still missing some key pieces. But I think that it's going to be in the hands of Herbert to lead this Chargers team to the playoff, in my opinion. So for now, I just think it's warm. I think it's warm. It's not scorching hot, not room temperature, but I just think it's warm for now. And, you know, if he does take that Chargers team deep in the playoff, then he'll definitely be in room temperature.
I want to add something, because, you know, you mentioned about Sean Payton. I love Sean Payton, the idea of Sean Payton. I don't love the idea. If I'm a Broncos fan, I love the idea of Sean Payton going to Denver, because Sean Payton, you know, Drew Brees was 6 foot, you know, and you know, those big armed, you know, shorter quarterbacks like Russell Wilson. I think the ideal, greatest situation for Russell Wilson would be to bring in Sean Payton. But with Sean Payton living in Los Angeles and saying, hey, I want to stay in Los Angeles, if I'm the Chargers ownership, which, you know, like you mentioned, Zach, they've gone cheap. They have a history of it. But in an ideal situation, if I'm the Chargers ownership, I'm doing everything I can to get Sean Payton. Everything. For Sean Payton and his offensive mind for Justin Herbert, that's a scary, scary thought.